Welcome, everyone. My name is Carmen Yetzi-Mazzara. I serve as Executive Director of APSIA, the Association of Professional Schools of International Affairs. In addition to our work specifically with graduate schools of international affairs, we're so glad to welcome you all here under the umbrella of our Public and International Service Advisor Network. We really hope to help you all be champions for these issues on your campuses and to make it even easier for your students to engage in international issues and global education broadly defined. Yvonne, you didn't need to rub it in by saying you're in sunny Arizona. I'm delighted to be joined today by Rebecca Johnson from the State Department, who will be sharing with us some of the amazing opportunities that state invests in to help your students engage with the world. And as we go through, if you have any questions, either technical in nature, you can send them to me, or programmatic in nature, you can put them in the chat, and we will get to those after Rebecca's done with her brief presentation. And so without further ado, because no one wants to listen to me, Rebecca, please.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Carmen. And hello, everyone. I am very excited to be here. As mentioned, my name is Rebecca Johnson, and I am a program officer with USA Study Abroad within the State Department's Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs. Oh, I see a note about Gilman. Wonderful. I work with a variety of programs, and I'm specifically here to talk with you about one program in particular today that Carmen reached out to me about, but I'll kind of touch upon a breadth of programs as well, because when I have a captive audience, I always try to share as much information as possible that I think might be useful. So I have a presentation that I am going to attempt to screen share. I am on a new computer. I have tested screen sharing, but this is my first presentation on it. So if we have an awkward pause, please forgive me. All right. Why is it not letting me share? Of course, this would happen. All right, 1 second. I think this is going to let me go now. Okay. There we go. Okay, you can see my slides now, right? Okay, thank you for your patience. My new computer has a mouse that works, so it is far superior, a mouse and keyboard that works, so it's far superior to my previous one, and now I've confirmed that I can share on it. Okay. So as Carmen mentioned, I will be happy to take any questions at the end. No need to wait. By all means, put them in the chat, and I will get to them at the end. I'm thinking that I will probably talk for, roughly 20 minutes or so, but I really want to leave a lot of time for questions. So please put them in the chat. Any questions you might have, any comments, anything at all, and I will get to it. But I will not pretend that I am such a Zoom expert that I will be able to give this presentation and answer questions in the chat at the same time. Maybe after another 5 years of this madness we're in, I'll be ready for that. So just to kind of set the scene just very quickly, hopefully you all have heard the great news of the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs and all the work that we do to support intercultural exchange, but just in case not, I wanted to include this slide in my presentation. So the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs, or ECA, as we call it for short, is the section of the State Department that really focuses on people-to-people exchanges and diplomacy. So we are connecting students, artists, professionals, musicians, every type of person you could imagine in the US and from countries abroad, and bringing them together with the idea that the stronger our people-to-people relationships are, the better our country to country relationships will be, the stronger they will be. So we do this through a variety of programs, including exchanges for US students, which I'll be talking about more. You'll see our beautiful stats there on this slide that are, of course, pre-COVID. Pre-COVID, we sent 15,000 American participants overseas each year, had 55,000 plus participants total globally. Hopefully, we will get back to those numbers sometime soon, but we'll see. I've yet to, my crystal ball has yet to show me that future. I've been predicting wrong every time when I've thought about when we might return to normal. So, let's see. Within the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs, I work, and where the programs I'm talking about today are situated in what we call USA Study Abroad. So USA Study Abroad's entire goal is to increase and diversify study abroad. We want more students reflecting the full diversity of the United States going abroad to more countries around the world, building relationships, sharing American culture, and gaining critical career skills. We do this through a variety of ways. The first one is offering study abroad opportunities directly. I'll touch upon those two programs, the Gilman Scholarship Program and the Critical Language Scholarship Program, at the end of my presentation. But what I'm really excited to talk about today is this second bullet point here: building institutional capacity for study abroad. We do this through a number of initiatives, but the primary way we do this is through our IDEAS program. So IDEAS stands for Increase and Diversify Education Abroad for US Students. Again, this is part of our goal of making sure more students, more diverse students are going abroad to more destinations. And as opposed to the Gilman Scholarship and the Critical Language Scholarship, which invests directly in students, the IDEAS program is about building the capacity of US colleges and universities to administer study abroad programs. We're very proud of the fact that our programs send 15,000 American students overseas every year to study abroad, but that is a drop in the bucket of the number of US higher education institutions. So we really see partnering with and investing in US colleges and universities as a key way to achieve our goal of increasing and diversifying study abroad. So when I talk about diversifying study abroad, for the IDEAS program, we approach this through three main lenses. First is diversifying the students who go abroad, especially those from underrepresented groups. So first generation college students, students from particular majors that don't study abroad, racial and ethnic minority students. We don't have, there's no definition. If you can convince us that they're underrepresented, we will listen to you. The second way is increasing and diversifying the number of US higher education institutions offering study abroad programs. We want study abroad to be an option for every student, no matter where they study, and we want to invest in institutions to help make that happen. The third is then just expanding study abroad to new overseas destinations, particularly those that are less common. This is a State Department program. There's a reason IDEAS is in the State Department and not, say, the Department of Education, because we really want students and universities building international relationships. So that is kind of the crux of the IDEAS program and its goals. And we achieve these through two primary avenues. First, it's actually the last one listed on screen, but I'll touch on it first, is we offer a variety of virtual and in-person trainings that are open to the field. We're not doing in-person now, but theoretically one day. So these are open to everyone. They are free. We offer them on a variety of topics. For example, we are doing an ongoing series on monitoring and evaluation with Mount Holyoke College. Our next session, which I'll have a slide on later on, is about disaggregating data and looking at outcomes for different student groups. For example, we've done ones on risk management. So we really try to tap into experts on critical topics to the field and provide trainings on those. The big exciting part of the Ideas program, and what I'm mainly here to talk about today, is our grant competition. So our grant competition for 2022 is currently open, and we will be awarding approximately 40 grants of up to $35,000 to US colleges and universities to build, diversify, expand their study abroad programmings. We usually only provide around 20 or so grants a year, but we're very excited this year to be offering double the number of grants. Just the State Department knows that it's a rough time out there for US colleges and universities. And while I wish we could be giving 400 grants, I'm really happy that we are at least able to double the number of grants that we are providing. So looking at the, oops, I lost my mouse. Let's go. Okay, there we go. Oop, too far. Sorry, I think my computer is on a delay, so I just skipped. Okay, there we go. I just skipped through everything. So looking at the Ideas Grant competition, on the screen here now, you'll see our major eligibility points. So if you meet these eligibility requirements, please apply. We would love to see your application. You have to be an accredited US institution of higher education physically based in the US or its territories. So if you are calling in from Puerto Rico, you qualify to apply. If you are calling in from Ohio, you cannot apply to go on a program to Puerto Rico because it is a part of the US, of course. So we always get questions about Puerto Rico. So I'm just going to preempt that now. Second, it must primarily support US undergraduate student mobility. Graduate students can participate in the programming, they can benefit from it. That is no problem at all. It just needs to primarily focus on US undergraduate students. And this next one is a really important one. Funding may not be used to support direct student cost. It can be used to support faculty from US and foreign partners to get together and plan, but it can't support US student costs. And this is really important because Ideas is a capacity building program. We don't want to just fund students to go overseas once. We want your institution to develop and really build a program or a resource or some other initiative that will help you for years to come better engage your students with the world. Happy to answer any qualifying questions around that at the end, but I always want to underscore that point and the reason behind it because it gets to the crux of the Ideas program. The fourth point there, institutions may submit multiple proposals, but individual units can only submit one application. So just to kind of explain that a bit more, let's say that your university is divided into colleges. So you have a College of Arts and Sciences and a College of Journalism. The College of Journalism and the College of Arts and Sciences can each submit a proposal, but the College of Journalism could not submit multiple proposals. We do this because we realize that different parts of different universities have different goals, of course. They may not be working together. They might not know the others applying. So we don't want to unintentionally disqualify people, but we don't want a throw everything at the wall and see what sticks strategy. We want institutions to really be thinking about what's their best idea for engaging their students internationally. This last one here is the real kicker these days with COVID. So Ideas funding can be used to develop virtual exchanges in any foreign location. It can only be used to develop in-person programming in foreign locations with the US Department of State travel advisory level of 1 or 2. Now I know you're saying, Rebecca, there's very few of those these days. And that's why we have that asterisk there. So if you're interested in developing a program in a particular country, go look at its travel advisory. If it's a level 3 or a level 4, so if it says, do not travel, and the only reason listed is COVID-19, you can submit an application. If you're then awarded for that grant proposal, we're going to have a conversation. We're going to see, does this look feasible? Should you just wait out and see if the travel advisory changes, or do you need to alter your program? So this is just, we don't want to limit the list of eligible countries right now, of course, because it's so small. So this is kind of the in-between policy we have come up with. So check out the travel advisory. If it's listed as a level 3 or a level 4, and the only reason listed is COVID-19, you are eligible to apply. I'm happy to get into more specific scenarios during the question and answer, because I know this is kind of a nuanced point, but that is the gist of that. So, okay. So I gave this big caveat about you can't apply for student costs. You can't use this funding just to send students overseas, so that, what can you do with it? Many things. And these are just some illustrative examples. Every year we fund multiple grant projects where I look and think, I would have never thought of that. So really this list is meant to be illustrative. We see a lot of people applying to create a faculty-led study abroad program. So a lot of the funding goes into salary, goes into professional development, goes into making sure someone is being properly paid for developing a new partnership and a new curriculum. This could include site visits to go visit partners or to bring foreign partners to the US. So really, those are the types of activities we're looking at. Again, you could also create an internship program, not just faculty-led study abroad programs, or that's just kind of an illustrative example. We also see the development of study abroad resources and materials. So for example, we have a grant with Gallaudet University currently, and they are developing resources for deaf students to study abroad. That will of course benefit their own students, but is also meant to be a resource for the field. So you can also think more broadly here. Another university grantee of ours is developing materials and programming to specifically engage their African-American male students in study abroad, because they're so severely underrepresented at their institution. So these are really just kind of some examples to get you thinking. If you go onto our website, which I'll drop that link in the chat at the end. I'm not going to try to get out of the screen share and then get back in it and drop a chat after we had that 30-second delay at the beginning. But I encourage you to go onto our program website and look at what current grantees are doing for inspiration. So a key part of the program that I also want to touch on is your ideas program grant application must align with one of 6 U.S. foreign policy goals. So again, this is a State Department program. We want to make sure that people are engaging students in activities that really connect to global needs and trends. So you'll see these 6 categories here, and you might be thinking, wow, Rebecca, these are really broad. And yes, like they are purposely meant to be broad. We are not trying to pigeonhole people into, a very small corner. We just really want to encourage institutions to think about how they can develop programming around these critical areas. So for example, global health, big topic right now. This could be looking at, we have programs that look at comparative public health policies in multiple countries. Programs that engage nursing students. We have a really interesting grant where it's taking nursing students to on a Spanish immersion course, because the local community needs Spanish translators and healthcare workers who speak Spanish. So really, again, if you have rationale, if you think about your university and your community's needs, and you can explain to us how it links into these foreign policy goals and your program, you'll sell us on it. We don't have, very specific projects in mind. There's information on this at the end, but we do have a webinar coming up at the beginning of February, specifically on how to align applications with US foreign policy goals. So if you want to know more about this topic, I really encourage you to join that session. You can hear from grantees. You'll get a whole hour plus of information, as opposed to this quick 60-second spiel, since I'm trying to not make you all listen to me drone for the entire hour. So just kind of going from the goals of the competition to get more into the nitty-gritty of it. So when you're applying for these grants, it will be for $35,000, as I said, and you'll be applying for a 2-year grant period. The grant period used to be more closer to 1 year, but because of COVID, we've just built into the beginning that it will be a 2-year grant cycle because we just want people to have time and not to have to worry about COVID. Knock on wood, things will be a little cleaner in 2 years. So as you're thinking about your programs, keep that in mind. And right now, our grant competition has been split into 2 phases with the goal of making it a bit more accessible, especially for institutions that may not have a lot of grant writing experience. So right now in the phase 1 application, which closes February 20th, it's a 750 word total proposal split out between a few short answer questions, which I'll provide more information on. And really the goal of this phase is just tell us your idea. Tell us what your school needs, what your student needs, and what program you've developed to address it. We'll then have peers in the field review these panels, and just based on, what are the best ideas, we will select approximately 80 semifinalists to go on to phase 2, what we're calling the proposal phase. In that phase, we will ask for more technical details. What's your monitoring and evaluation plan? What's your full budget? Things like that. We'll provide resources to help semifinalists put these proposals together, but that's where we'll dig into more of those details. We're estimating that phase will be opened up late March, and that our goal is to then have it close May 31st, with then finalists being notified over the summer. Let me see. Okay. So again, just to dive more into the phase 1 portion, since that is the first round you have to get through first, there are 4 main parts. First is the institutional description in the statement of need. So, tell us who you are and what you want to, and the need you see in your institution. Maybe you primarily have you're a community college with health science students, and none of them study abroad because it doesn't work into their curriculum. Tell us that. Relate it to what your school and your students need. The second part then, and the bulkiest part, is the proposed project, where you would outline what you would want to do and how that addresses the need you identified in the institutional description. So make sure it's reasonable, make sure it's feasible, and really tell us how you want to address your students' needs. The third part there is foreign policy alignment. Like I mentioned before, you'll have to pick one of those 6 foreign policy goals and just describe to us how your program addresses and aligns with one of those goals. And then finally, a budget estimate. So this will be more, you'll be asked for a total estimate here. This estimate can change to the final phase because we realize now that, you're still putting things together, things may come through, but we want you to, budget is so important that we want you to be thinking about it from the beginning. So kind of to wrap up this, some best practices and tips. Be sure to read the entire request for proposals document, which I can provide a link to. There's a lot of information in there. I'm not going to lie to you, it's a dense document because we're outlining all of the information we're looking for, all the requirements. So just make sure you give a good, thorough read of it. Second, foreign policy goal alignment is key. I keep kind of stressing the foreign policy goals at different points because sometimes people have great applications, but then they don't address the foreign policy goals at all. And it's just, you kind of do one of those fish shakes where you're like, oh no, you were so close. So really think about what goal you're trying to engage students around. What knowledge area are you trying to grow for them? Third, consider collaborations with other offices and partners on or off campus. Especially if you're looking to start a new program, you're unsure, you're not quite what to do. We've had a lot of great partnerships apply for funding, and a lot of times they are, I shouldn't say a lot of times, but there's many successful ones. So for example, one of our projects right now is a group of community colleges in Washington who are banding together to develop programs together because it's more cost effective. If you do apply in a partnership or a consortium, you do need a lead university who will be responsible for grant funding. But we've seen some really great projects where people engage on and off campus partners. The next point is check with your sponsored's program office about any grant requirements they may have. When you do your budget, what fringe rate should you include to cover staff expenses and benefits? Is there an indirect cost rate that your institution requires you to include? We want you to look at this ahead of time because we've had some cases where people don't look into this. They submit the grant, they're awarded funding, and then once we go through the red tape at the end, their university's sponsored programs office or the equivalent finds out about it and says, oh, we have an institutional policy where we must charge 20% indirect costs. And then the program has to, the school has to redo their entire budget because they have less money than they thought they did. So just to check in with whoever the point of contact you have that can talk to you about what cost the university might require to be included. Next is when you look at the RFP, you will see that there is an application template provided. You will apply online through our online portal, but we have an application template so you can plan everything out and not have to be working in this portal online and worrying about, is this saved, is this not? So that's a tool that we found is really helpful for people and planning. Finally, do look at those grantee profiles I mentioned that are on our website. They are great sources of inspiration. People will probably come up with even more new ideas. So if you see something if you don't see anything that resonates with your idea, don't worry. The possibilities are endless, but do check out those profiles. And finally, the email we have there is ideas@worldlearning.org. is our program email. Ideas is a program of the State Department, but World Learning is our implementing partner who helps us oversee these grants. So if you have some nitty-gritty questions, if you go back and think about something and you want to follow up, that is the email for you. And then here is just some important dates to keep in mind. I kind of alluded to this beforehand, but we are in phase 1. That closes February 20th. If semifinalists will be notified in March, and that's when we move into phase 2. Phase 2 will close at the end of May. Our goal is then to announce finalists in July, and there will be a 2-year program implementation period of roughly September 2022 to August 2024. You don't need to use that whole grant period. If you don't plan to travel, if you can get everything done in 8 months, power to you, go for it. But we like to include that whole long time period just for flexibility. Okay. And then like I said, I'll drop some links in the chat, but this is just to flag some upcoming events that we have. As mentioned, there is a specific information session we were doing for the grant competition on how to align with foreign policy goals. And then over on the other side of the screen, you'll see what I referenced some of our virtual trainings. These are free, these are open, sign up, join us, be engaged if you can. If you're just listening on your lunch break, like I often do, that's okay too. But we hope you can join us for at least one of these events. So that's it for ideas. And that really is kind of the bulk of what I wanted to focus on today, since this is our open competition. But I also just wanted to touch briefly on our other USA Study Abroad programs for students while I had you all here. Hopefully you're aware of them, but if not, oh man, do I got some exciting news for you. So first is our Benjamin A. Gilman International Scholarship Program. So this provides over 3,000 scholarships a year of up to $5,000 to Pell Grant recipients to study or intern abroad. So the whole goal of the Gilman program is to make study abroad accessible and affordable to students who otherwise may not have the means to go overseas. There's also an additional $3,000 that students can apply for if they're studying if they're studying a critical language. So really, if you have a student who is a Pell Grant recipient, is looking to study abroad, they have a program in mind, this is a great resource for them. And the application just opened this week for our next round of programming. So students can apply now for programs beginning between May 1st and April 30th. And this can be for virtual programs or in-person programs in both study abroad or internship programs. Just like with ideas, the travel advisories and the global pandemic have limited the number of places that Gilman scholars can go to in person. But if you look on the Gilman website, which is listed here, you will see a list of qualifying countries that students can apply for. And we've instituted a lot of flexibilities. Virtual programming, people can delay their programming if need, they can switch to alternate locations. So we're really trying to be as flexible as possible while keeping in mind our #1 goal, which is the safety and security of our students. So I'm happy in the question and answer period to dive more in to the Gilman program if you have specific questions, but I just wanted to highlight this resource as well for your students in case you weren't aware of it. And the Gilman program does amazing virtual events and trainings. So if you just want a refresher on the Gilman program, or if you're new, I would encourage you every Tuesday for the next 4 weeks, no, 3 weeks, whatever, until February 8th. I don't know why I tried to put a time bound on that when it says February 8th right there. They're doing some orientation sessions via Zoom that I would encourage you to attend. And then I just want to highlight within Gilman, we have a special initiative, the Gilman McCain Scholarship, named after the late Senator John McCain from Arizona. And this provides awards specifically for children who are dependents of active duty service members who receive any type of Title IV federal financial aid. So whereas Gilman is limited to Pell Grant recipients, Gilman McCain is open to any Title IV federal financial aid recipients if they are child dependents of active duty service members. Again, I can dive more into detail there if needed, but it's a really special initiative, and it accepts applications on a rolling basis and is a great opportunity if you know students who fit that demographic. Okay. Then the final program I'll just highlight very quickly is the Critical Language Scholarship Program, which provides fully funded scholarships for US students to attend immersive overseas summer institutes in one of 15 critical languages. So you'll see the list of languages there. I won't read them to you. But these are languages that have been deemed critical for US national security and economic prosperity, and we want and need more Americans to learn them, but we recognize that they're not as commonly taught here in the US. Some of these languages do have language requirements where you need to have studied it some beforehand. Many of them do not. And even if it's a language requirement, for example, Chinese, or a language like Chinese that does have a language requirement, if a student has done self-study, if they've done tutors, if they've used books, they can do that as well too. It's not just limited to a very strict definition of sit in a classroom and learn from a teacher for 5 hours a week. I'll mention as well too that last year we did not send students overseas. We adapted it to virtual programming and it was very successful. We still saw great language gains in students. I do not know what we'll be doing this summer. If I knew what we were doing and could predict that, I'd make a lot more money than I currently do. So that's just to say that CLS is continuing. Even if students aren't going overseas, we are still engaging students virtually. And just to kind of differentiate between Gilman and CLS a little bit, with Gilman, students say, I have a program, I want to go on it. It's important for me because of XYZ reasons. I will use this scholarship money to support that initiative. The CLS program is our program that we lead and design. So they are applying for our programs. They don't find an outside program and it's fully funded. So just to kind of differentiate those two. And then finally, I will just outline a few other things. We have a lot of resources for advisors. So please do go check out those program websites. There are outreach materials, template emails, template social media, so many resources if you want to reach out to students about them. We also do a series of Gilman and CLS advisor workshops and many virtual trainings. So if you're not already registered as an advisor for one of those programs and you are interested, please do sign up. You'll get added to our email list and you'll learn about opportunities, including volunteering for selection panels. It says volunteer for Gilman and CLS selection panels. I was remiss for not adding ideas because we also have selection panels for ideas. These are perhaps the best way to learn about what makes competitive applications because you're the one judging other applications. So really volunteering for selection panels is, I think, perhaps the best thing you could do to really learn about the programs and how to write your own strong ideas applications and help students write strong Gilman and CLS applications. Finally, I will just say very briefly, there are a ton of other programs in ECA, tons of Fulbright programs for American scholars where you all as higher ed professionals could engage in an exchange going overseas with a university overseas, for professionals, for administrators. So really I've already been talking too long. I'm not going to dive into the gamut of programs, but do go to the websites listed there for more information. All right. I've been talking for longer than I thought I was, but I guess I just got too excited. I will stop screen sharing and dive into questions. I will pause though. Carmen, I don't know if there's anything for you to flag or add. I'll just give a moment in case we can hear someone else talking besides me.
Rebecca, that was amazing. So thank you for all of the talking that you did. I'm seeing a couple questions in the chat and I encourage folks to either raise their hands or put them in the chat. And to kick us off, Malika, I'm gonna invite you to unmute yourself. And if you can't, I'll read your question for you.
Did you say my name? Okay. It's like, so technically I have two questions. So one is, if we need to develop resources or workshops, etc., around study abroad, is it possible for the grant to pay a course release for faculty? And then also if we develop a study abroad program from scratch, like a faculty-led one, is it possible for the first trip for the faculty's travel costs to be covered when they set up everything and take student for the first time? And then the other question, I think you answered, is about collaboration with other universities. There are several programs that we would love to send our students to, but we were never successful in setting up the MOU. But having a grant in the back from the State Department would probably light fire under the administration. So yeah, two of my questions.
Yeah, all great questions, and everything you described sounds great. Yes, covering travel costs for U.S. faculty to go abroad and meet with partners, or for foreign faculty to come to the U.S. institution and meet with partners and develop partnerships is a very common grant cost. Very common. I would highly encourage you to include that in your grant application if that's something you are considering. It's also very common to include cost around faculty. Every school charges this differently. Sometimes it's listed as a fee, sometimes it's listed as a one-time payment to a faculty or to another part of the university for their engagement. So it really depends on how your university wants to describe it and budget it, but totally common to include fees like that around engaging faculty. Yes, and I will say the final part about partnerships. Yes, that's also an outcome of a lot of our grants. Some people say, when they're applying for the grants, they'll say, we want to develop a program in this country. We have a few contacts. We don't have any relationships. We would use this grant to go to that country, meet with contacts, and then go back a second time to further relationships. So all sounds good. And we have a lot of great examples of grantees who did exactly what you said, use this grant to then leverage additional institutional support. So yeah, everything you described sounds great.
Rebecca, that's a great segue to Emmanuel's question. Emmanuel, please.
Hi, Rebecca. Thank you so much. This is so helpful. So again, I echo what Carmen said, and thank you for all your talking. My question was just about the last piece of the concept phase portion on the budget estimate. And so I know the award amount you mentioned was 35,000. Can the budget exceed that amount? And if it exceeds that, can it show, is it helpful to indicate if we anticipate seeking other funding, or if we are going to get other institutional funding? Basically, I wanted to know if it's okay that what we propose is larger, and that this is part of a larger capacity building project, and if that helps the proposal or not.
Yeah, great question. And while you can only request $35,000 from us, it's totally fine if this is part of a wider initiative or a larger budget that exceeds that $35,000 amount. So in the first phase 1 application, we're just asking for, top line numbers and then a brief description of how you'll use funding. Because we really just want to make sure that people are on track and that what they're proposing isn't wildly impossible. So if you did do something like this, it would be important for you in your notes to say something along the lines of, the total budget, this is part of a wider university program that has a total budget of, $50,000, but we have funding from XYZ resource. You can note that if you think it would be helpful. In phase 2 of the application, you will be asked for a full line item budget. And we also will be asking for if there is institutional or other outside partner cost share. We don't ask for this in phase 1 because it's not a judgment criteria. You don't have to provide cost share. It's not necessary. So we didn't want to include that in the first place, but it is data we like to collect. So, and we do have grantees where their grants are part of a larger initiative, and it's a larger budget and we're only covering a portion of it. That's totally fine.
Rebecca, I know, again, I invite everyone to raise your hand or to put questions in the chat. You had stressed the importance of foreign policy alignment. And in those 6 big categories that you gave, in some ways, they are distinct buckets, but in some ways they're so interrelated. Is it more compelling if folks try to touch on multiple buckets, or are you really trying to see a deep dive into technology or climate and agriculture or something like that?
That's a really great question. So either. It's really what works best for your institution and your goals. So we have some projects where they have just one goal. For example, there's one project, I think I mentioned it before, where it's a technical college where a vast majority of their students are, like health technical science degrees, and they just can't study abroad at school. So they developed a program specifically for those students, saying, we want our students to have global experiences. It'll make them more empathetic and experienced healthcare workers. So their only goal is public health or global health. It's very clear, it's very aligned, and they articulated that well. There's another grant we have. In some grants, they address 3-4 foreign policy goals. You just have to explain it. So for example, we have one grantee where they are targeting students from underrepresented majors with low study abroad engagement rates. So they've linked each of those majors to one of the foreign policy goals. So one's not better than the other. What really just matters is how you articulate how this goal, how you're aligning with this goal, and how it relates to your own campus needs around study abroad and student engagement. Yeah, but good question. So just pick what works. Don't try to don't try to fit all 6 in. That'll make it worse. If you have one and you feel really strongly about it, just stick with that. It'll be a better proposal.
That's good advice. And again, I invite folks to raise their hands. Otherwise, you got to just listen to me talk instead of just listening to Rebecca talk. But while I wait for you all, I'm curious, you talked about the monitoring and evaluation component, and schools are on different journeys of building a culture of study abroad. So if you reach the end of this grant period and maybe all of those agricultural students that you wanted to inspire to go do climate change work didn't quite come at the rate you expected them to, how does the State Department look at the M&E piece at the end of the grant, and how does that relate to the application process in the beginning?
That's a really good question, and so applicable to what we are dealing with now, because we have grantees who we gave funds in 2019, who we anticipate to be done in 2020, and now 2022, they're still hanging out with us, adapting their program goals, adapting to this new reality. So in short, we are very flexible. And we really just want to see you communicating with us, reiterating your roadblocks, having our team help you with them, and looking to build capacity. These grants exist because we know that it's difficult. So don't worry about where you have, if you propose some metric, we're going to hold you to it. That's not how it works. Another thing I'll really stress is that, student travel is not required in these. Like, the end of the grant does not have to be, we sent 12 students to Ghana for a week. It's about building capacity. So if your 2-year program is all developing partnerships, creating that program, and those students still don't go overseas until a year afterwards, that's fine. We know that we're building capacity, and that's what we're focused on. Yeah, hopefully that answers that and allays any fears, because yes, we always get that question.
Some other funders are not quite as tolerant and generous as you all seem to be with this program. Like, I think that actually relates to your question about whether there has to be a study abroad program ready to go, or you can use it to develop the course. But did you have any other component to that Rebecca hasn't touched on?
Nope, answered it.
I often get questions now that things like Gilman and CLS and some of the others have moved to virtual, as to what that really means for students and what that means for whether faculty should steer students in particular directions. I know you're not an expert, but could you unpack a little bit about what that virtual element means these days?
Yeah, and in the context of our grants, it's really interesting because the IDEAS program's funding has always been eligible to be used for virtual exchange, but it was always more kind of seen as like a hybrid model. It was more to kind of prepare students and extend engagement as opposed to the actual engagement itself. But then obviously COVID happened, and we got a lot more attention on the fact that we would fund virtual exchanges. So when we are looking at applications, we do not hold in-person exchanges or virtual exchanges to be higher or more competitive. They're assessed equally, because they really can have complementary goals, and they can also have, different goals engaging different populations. So for example, we have one grant to a community college where they just wrote about how a lot of their, a large percentage of their students are part-time, they have work responsibilities, they have families, and how it just wasn't feasible to expect them to go overseas for a long period of time. So they are developing virtual exchanges to reach that population of students, with the goal, knowing that a lot of research has shown that students who engage in a virtual exchange are then more likely to go engage in an in-person exchange than those who didn't. So, and I'm thinking of one grant in particular, but we have multiple grants around virtual exchange where it's really focusing on, there's a population of students we really want to engage globally. They're not wanting to go abroad in person. Let's develop this virtual exchange. It'll be a great experience for them, and hopefully that also leads them towards in-person. So that's what we see with IDEAS, and we really welcome virtual applications. Yeah.
We have a question wondering if virtual exchange is like a good pen-pal relationship.
Oh man, listen, man, so many thoughts on virtual these days. looking at the programs that we have developed now, it definitely is more built out than a good old Penpal. And really what these grants are being used for a lot of time is the developing of that curriculum. So that I think that myself included, going into COVID, I thought, virtual events, those are easier. Doing things virtually, just kind of get people together on a Zoom. But to really plan something that's virtual and engaging is very, very difficult. Maybe even more, I don't want to say more difficult, but different in a different way than in person. So a lot of so the grants that we see around virtual engagement, a lot of it is just developing that curriculum, developing that partnerships so that the programs they're developing are engaging and not just, I talk to your student, you talk to my student, and we're seeing some interesting results. I know one grantee is working on some virtual programming around STEM specifically. So that's kind of interesting to see develop. How do you have, STEM activities together virtually? So yeah, if you're thinking about doing a virtual programming, really look at how funding could be used to support that capacity development so it is as engaging of a program as possible.
And I know for some of the language acquisition programs too, it's hours of intense study and conversation and dialogue, not I just sort of write you when I have the time. It's very intensive from what I understand. So friends, while we have Rebecca captive, any other great advice you'd like to draw out from her? The one last thing I'm curious about is whether there are things you encourage folks to avoid as they put their ideas, grants together, big red flags or landmines to not step on, so that all of my colleagues here on the call can reap the benefits of this program.
That's a really great question. I think where a lot of people get themselves in trouble is the feasibility and the sustainability, which are separate, but also kind of related. I'm sure you have many, many, many good ideas, and sometimes people try to cram it all into one, and it's either muddied, you don't quite, like, you really want a clear audience of students or a country, you really want a clear goal and clear steps to that. So make sure that you're not just throwing the entire kitchen sink. Make sure it is really focused and defined. And then on a related note, sustainability. Think about how the program will continue long-term or build capacity for long-term. So if your entire program is contingent on one very specific factor that could change at the drop of a dime, and if you say, oh, this program is contingent, the continuation of this program is contingent on me getting a $50,000 budget increase from my university, it's not quite sustainable. So really think about that. And I'll say too that we see a lot of programs that are multi-country, where people are building partnerships across literally 6 countries, but they're all along the same theme. And we see people who develop something just for one country around many themes. So I just kind of say that to illustrate that you can throw us your big ideas. I don't want you to think that I'm saying, just pinpoint one thing and stick to that, but just make sure that what you're doing is really kind of directed and, really well thought through, because feasibility and sustainability are 2 really big things we look at.
That is great advice. Any last questions for the good of the order? Rebecca, would you be open to sharing your slides with us in addition to the recording? And you are on mute, dear.
Yes, that would be great. I'll send you an updated version from what I sent you earlier, Carmen, because I caught a typo. And that saves me from trying to rapidly drop 12 links into this chat right now. I will drop just the main one to our program website for people to look at. But as you saw on the slides, there's tons of links to all of the program websites and whatnot, so you can find them there. But just to kind of poke around the Ideas website now, there's the link.
Thank you so much. And thank you to all of our advisors for joining us. You'll get links if you miss Rebecca's link. In my every Friday email, we have an ideas paragraph coming out soon, as well as Gilman information and all the rest. So if you miss it now, you'll get it later from me on those Friday messages. And I want to thank all of you for being here, and thank Rebecca in particular for sharing this great and amazing program. And I look forward to seeing all of the ideas that our folks here put together to build out their capacity on their campuses. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.